that this is something which has to be addressed for, if not for anything, nothing for altruistic motive. I am saying that this has to be done. This has to be done. Addressing and reconciling these two is important, not only for the government but also for people and for the industry particularly. Because if we don't do that, the social stability on which your profitability is premised is going to be in trouble. So it is not for it's not any sort of mehrbani, so to say, that the industry should come forward. In its own enlightened self-interest, they will have to come forward and do their role in terms of reconciling these two extremes of, the gap between these two problems about very high rating in terms of economic growth, but very poor rating on the social front. Why do I say education is so important, or skill development is so important? Just let me give you some parameters. One of the parameters for higher education, one can talk about all levels of education, but let's focus on higher education because that leads to the employment and growth immediately. Look at our higher education. You can look at education in terms of three aspects. One is, of course, access. Second is quality. Third is employability. And on all three fronts, we are way behind. Let's start with the access. Take the case of access. In terms of access, the typical indicator of access is what is called gross enrollment ratio, which is defined as, you ask a very simple question. What is the age for higher education? 18 to 23 is considered to be the age for higher education. In that age group, what proportion of our population have access to higher education? That number is called gross enrollment ratio. Today, what is our gross enrollment ratio? Our gross enrollment ratio today is 12.4%. The latest number is, 1 year old number is 12.4%. Is that large or small? It is awfully small. Our gross enrollment ratio, compare that with the rest of the world. If you look at the world average is 24. Industrial countries average is 58%. Some countries have more than 70%. But industrial countries as a whole average is 58%. Even if you take developing countries, the average is 18%. And we are stuck at 12.4%. This does not augur well for our future. This is very important. Now, 12.4 is very small enough. Just compare that with any group. China is a very good comparison. Until the year 1995-96, Chinese GER and India GER was same. Both were at 6%. China today is at 23% and we are at 12%. That is the difference in perspective. That is the difference in terms of the investment that has taken place in the social sector. So, GER has to improve, and this is going to be absolutely important. Now, this 12.4% is low enough. Now, divide the GER by different criteria. If we divide that between rich and poor, between urban and rural, between male and female, between scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, minorities and others, what is the picture that we get? It is shocking. Can you imagine that at this time and age, if you look at scheduled tribe women from poor strata, most of them are anyway, and from the rural side, what is our GER? The GER for that group is 1.4%. And I say this with all seriousness, that we must all hang our head in shame that at this time and age, we have more than a strata of society where more than 98% people do not have even access to higher education. This does not only this does not augur well, this is shameful on our part to have strata of society, our part, which has such low access to higher education. That's one point. Same thing happens to Muslims, same thing happens to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, rural, urban, all these regional disparities if you take into account, there are very serious problems of sheer access. But access is only one part of higher education. Let's talk about quality. Quality, there is a very serious problem with the quality of higher education. Srimati Jyoti Ben was Vice Chancellor of SNDT University, and we have some other educationists also here. The quality of education is extraordinarily poor, again shamefully poor. There are just too many problems there. Just to mention few very quickly, the curricula for most of our universities, most courses of most universities are hopelessly out of date. Hopelessly out of date. You know, they have not been revised for 10 years, 20 years, some of them have not been revised for 30 years. That does not augur well for us. One. Second, the quality of teachers. You know, I can say this again with responsibility. I brought about major change in Pune University, but I am talking about universities as a whole. Can you imagine 50 to 60% teachers, even in good universities, do not have vaguest idea of recent advances in their own subjects. I have known many teachers, you know, there are some great teachers here available here. I have known many places where teachers are actually teaching using the guides, and they have, you know, some of them are teaching with the same notes that they had taken when they were studying. I call them Indian version of yellow pages. You know, no, it is not a laughing matter. It is a matter of life and death for us. I think there can't be a more lethal combination than curricula being out of date and teachers who are out of sync. Nobody can do bigger damage to our society than this lethal combination of the courses which are out of date and teachers who are out of sync. And then there are many other problems with the quality, but let me not go to that. Take the case of accreditation. Only 20% universities are accredited. Can you imagine? There are very many problems there in the quality of education, higher education that needs improvement. Third one I want to talk about is employability. Do you know that, you know, until just 10 years back, there were a lot of people saying that India has the third largest technically trained manpower. This is what we used to talk about. You know, that was all right with the rate of growth of 3.5%, and you don't count that in terms of absolute number of people who are trained. You have do we have trained people commensurate with the rate of growth that you have? At 3.5%, maybe that absolute number was okay. Now it is absolutely not okay. And surveys after surveys have shown today that among the engineering graduates that we produce, you know, the survey, take the most liberal survey, it shows that about 33% of our engineers are simply not employable, period. In many cases, 60% of them are not employable. This is a very serious problem. This again goes to show the kind of rift that we have between what is required out there in industry and the kind of training that we are actually giving to our graduates in the university. This is a very serious problem, and this calls for a major reform of the education system. I have just given you snippets of the problem, not even an integrated whole, because there are many more. Let's see the B part of this, skill development. Skill development is another challenge which goes very well with higher education. Skill development. Do you know that, you know, what is the proportion of people in India, what is the proportion of youth in India who have formal vocational education? The 2004-2005 numbers are 2%. Only 2% of our youth have skill development training, you know, the vocational education. There are 8% more youth who have informal sort of skill development training in terms of on-the-job training of kind. So informal vocational education. So together it is 10%. That proportion, that ratio is again abysmally small. Not too long ago, the comparison was made when we were at 10% with formal and informal. Formal 2% and informal 10%. At that time, even a country like Korea, you know what was the ratio? 87% of youth were technically sound and technically skilled people. Now that again goes to show that we have a very long way to go. So in both counts, you know, while our aspirations have risen and while we are doing very well on economic growth, this is something that cannot be taken for granted. The momentum will take us to 10% plus growth, but to be able to sustain that, what is required is a comprehensive change in the higher education sector as well as in the skill development sector.